How might your microbiome affect not only your physical health, but deeper, maybe more soulful aspects of your well-being? In this episode, I'm joined by Richard Nikoley. Richard is a writer, thinker, and adventurer with a diverse background that spans military service, entrepreneurship, and an enduring passion for health and transformation. Richard is perhaps a different guest to most on this show, and intentionally so. I was interested in creating conversations that bridge two worlds: the soulful, spiritual, mythical perspective that is typical on this show with a completely different one, and then to see what is born from the union of those two worlds. So, this is the first of what I hope will be many episodes of this kind. In this show, we explore the intricate connections between community, diet, and the microbiome, weaving together science, storytelling, and spirituality. We dive into how inner and outer communities shape human experience and how ancestral diets can connect us to the wisdom of the past. We reflect on the distortions of industrial society, the transformative power of dietary choices, a shamanic perspective on consumption and well-being, and the mysterious interplay between nutrition and our psyche. But before we dive into all of that goodness, if you are walking your soul path in this crazy modern world and would benefit from guidance, support, and kinship, come join us at the Academy of the Soul, Unio. You can find out more by hopping on over to bemythical.com/Unio or click the link in the description. And now, back to the show. Let's dive in. Hello, Richard. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Leanne.
We are going to have a conversation that I think is in some ways a little bit different for both of us. And as we were just talking about, it's a little bit of a kind of coming together of our two different worlds and sort of seeing what gets created in the union of those, which I'm really looking forward to.
We talked about that, and it's not the normal thing for me. But as I said, so this is an opportunity for perhaps from the mythical realm to learn something. Coming from my background, and what do you get when you cross a German immigrant Lutheran with the daughter of Idaho USA Mormon? And so you get a fundamentalist born again Baptist at the age of 10 years old, and then the whole thing of that. But over that time, just to pay a little bit of homage to your side, is that I went through this hard atheism stage, and I found I didn't like atheism because it was kind of petulant. Let them have their nativity scenes and their Christmas trees and whatever, right? Is how they connect with one another. And in years past, I've enjoyed lectures. It was a guy, Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth and stuff. And most recently, actually, I watched a Netflix series. Actually, there's two seasons by a guy named Graham Hancock called Ancient Apocalypse.
Yes.
And what was very interesting to me, I mean, besides all of his evidence or questions and it's how all these civilizations or cultures all over the world have this mythology that has so many common chords. They have
Yes.
their origin story, they have their flood story, they have their death, rebirth, redemption story. They have all of these, and they all have them. So was it given to them, or is it just something that humans need to have, something to tell the children, right? So how do you explain to the children what life is about? You tell them stories. So
Yeah.
that's my simple way of coming, hopefully approaching your community from more of a kind of a science-y guy, just the facts, ma'am, cold hard fact, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I really appreciate your openness, but also your reverence for other views and other ways of looking at these things. It really is appreciated. So we're talking about this idea of from my lens, how we evolved with deep community and community of all kinds, community with other humans, community with the land, community with other beings, community with spirits, but then also how we had an inner community that
Mm-hmm.
in more modern language, we might call the microbiome. And I was like, this is fascinating to me in that we are as much a product of that outer community as we are the inner community. And what might, whilst we are now beginning to understand the impact of for most of us, being bereft of true community
Mm-hmm.
externally, I don't think we've had so much focus on that, us also being bereft of the inner community we evolved with, certainly again from this kind of more spiritual, soulful, mythical lens. But to
Mm-hmm.
me, it's like, well, if we acknowledge there is an impact in being kind of torn out of the roots of that type of community that we evolved with all of the myths that you're talking about, these are deep archetypes that humans were raised within and entwined with, what might this, if we then again look internally at the microbiome we evolved with, what might that show us? What might that show us that we have lost? And also, why might we reclaim it? So that's my fascination and why I really wanted to talk to you. And I think let's just start, and this hopefully will be a little bit more on kind of more familiar ground for you. Like for you, why did this fascination with the microbiome start?
Actually, a guy up in Alaska of all places, and he's an ex-military dude, as am I. U.S. He was Air Force. I was Navy, and he was a reader of my blog. As I mentioned to you, I've been blogging for 21 years, and I've developed quite a following. And so he was a commenter, and he came in and was dropping some comments about potato starch.
Mm,
And the interesting thing about raw potato starch, so if you extract the starch from potatoes in a raw state, not cooked, think of analogously to popcorn kernels. So it's like the kernel of popcorn. If you cook it, it pops open. So
mm,
these are just the kernels, right? And it turns out it's about 80%. A potato is about 80% that starch, and it's quote non-digestible. All right. So what that means is that when you eat it, it's not really broken down by your stomach acid or your small intestine, but the bugs in your gut, of which there's more bacteria, number of bacteria in your gut than cells in your body. There's
wow.
amongst those bacteria, there's more DNA than your human DNA, right? So we're really not, we think of ourselves, but our cells and everybody's DNA, our self DNA is different, but
Mm,
also our gut biome DNA is even more widely diverse.
mm,
And this is going to come down to, not to get too far off track, but the potato starch is food for gut bugs. They
mm,
digest it. And when they digest, they have byproducts, just like when we eat food, we have byproducts. And these things, depending on this different kinds of bacteria in your gut, these chemicals can do different things. They can it's like chemical warfare. They can be fighting each other. So you're looking for a balance. So you have this whole civilization in your gut that
mm,
could be like, it could be like Europe hundreds of years ago, where everybody is at war with everybody else,
mm.
right? And the boundaries are not quite set. You've ever seen those maps where the boundaries are shifting over time, right?
It's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
mythical tale in itself,
yeah,
isn't
yeah, yeah.
it? Going on
It's
down
right,
there.
exactly. So the that's what's going on. But these these things that the bacteria give off, they affect all of us, but the mix is so unique to each person in one sense. But in another sense, cultures and communities who eat largely, especially traditionally, where everybody is basically eating mostly the same things, before modern industrial
Mm.
society and industrial food engineering to get you to eat more and more and more of this sort of thing. So you had communities. It could be speculated that people um, gather around or think around or embrace the same values and modes of ways of thinking, life ways, and because they have similar diets. So their gut microbiomes are shooting off these things that add to that community. So then you get into an industrial society where everybody's flying everywhere across the globe, and you're going on vacation and visiting, you're trying this diet. So everybody's diet is vastly different, right? And then you get these antagonisms all over the place. Everybody's
Mm.
antagonistic. You get online, it's crazy. Politics in America is off the charts insane now. In Europe too, right? Pretty much the Western world, everywhere. You don't even have to. You don't even have to talk about politics specifically anymore. You can just say, "Oh, it's all insane. It's crazy. It's right." It it doesn't matter which side you're on. I think we can all agree it's getting crazy. So, you have to wonder, and speculatively, how much diet has to do with that, and diet directly impacts all those trillions of gut microbes that shoot off all of these chemicals that affect even your thinking in various ways, your emotional states and your contemplative states. If you can intake, like smoke something or take something in, uh, and have these, um, various experiences from just being high to hallucinogenic and out of body contemplate, then certainly the gut bugs could potentially have some impact there as well. So how did I
Mm.
does that
Wow.
make
That certainly set the scene for us. I
yeah
love so much of what you've just said. What you said there at the end, I think is such an interesting lens. Looking at it from that, I guess, more shamanic perspective, where it's long understood that what we consume is going to affect us on many, many different levels. And
hmm
certainly, I think in our modern culture, as we're sort of just starting to come back into awareness of that, of course, these are working with teacher plants is, been around, probably almost as long as humans have been around and are intertwining with them. But this is something we're just starting to reclaim the understanding of. And is partial at best, but I think this is a really important part of our story, that we do start to come back into relationship with those kind of plants. But the interesting thing is when we look at more shamanic cultures, they don't appear to have quite such a strong division between this is a teacher plant, a plant that creates these psychoactivating effects, and over here is everything else. They understand that, really there isn't a kind of we could just take something and it has no effect. It's all again
mm
part of this um, unfolding where everything is interacting with everything else. And certainly my own work, in fact, the course I'm teaching right at the moment is around working with the rose, the plant, the rose, the spirit of the rose. And my own personal experiences it has been as psychoactivating as substances we would typically call teacher plants.
you're
It,
talking regular roses, like the
yes, regular
flower,
roses. Yes, yes,
like the
yes.
flower, like what
Exactly.
guys give to girls. Oh,
Yes,
so that's the
that
motive.
kind of rose. Yes.
Really?
And of course, it requires, I'd say, more openness and sensitivity in order to work with these kind of like seemingly non psychoactivating plants, to work with them in a way where it does allow us to open to experiences. Um, and yet, it absolutely can work that way. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love what you're saying. It's like, well, from what you're talking about here, is it any wonder that what we take into our bodies are going to have potentially the profound effects on
Mm-hmm.
how we feel, how we think, what we're open to? It
Yes.
feels to me that
Well,
makes actually a lot more sense than thinking it wouldn't.
well, and like I really just speculate here and throw out questions or throw out ideas. And I'm not one, even if I have read studies and stuff. I find I read hundreds, thousands of studies because I've been doing this whole diet and health thing, 15 years, and you just get used to doing it. But it's not something I quote or give chapter and verse like a hammer. It's kind of like, nor do I quote Bible verses or verses from the Quran or any kind of book. I just give out ideas and do your own homework and do your own research. But it strikes me, I've lived, uh, now I'm 63 years old, so 10 years of my life now has been lived. I'm an American, West Coast American. So 10 years of my life has been living in Asia. I lived for 5 years in Japan in the latter half of the 1980s. And
Wow.
during that time, I visited Thailand a number of times, 6 or 7 times. And now I'm coming up on 5 years here. Just in just a couple months, I'll be 5 years. And that was an accident. I got here right in the beginning of 2020.
Oh,
And,
gosh.
and,
And
and
so I
then
had to stay there.
I was I was actually
Hmm.
at the airport after my 2 month visa or entry permit was done. I was at the airport to fly to Vietnam, and flight was canceled, and that was like March 15, 16, 2020, and the dominoes started falling. I didn't leave the country
Gosh.
for 4 years. Now I call it home. So, and my genetic lineage is Northern European.
Mhm.
Father German immigrant. My mother's family came. Is Irish, Dutch, Welsh, that sort of thing ish. I don't know. And so I think that if you look back, so you can say, well, if your diet was such like in a tropical region like Thailand, where I often tell people the good thing about Thailand is there's two good things about Thailand. Number if things really go haywire, number one, you can't freeze to death. Number two, you can't starve to death. Right? That's
Important things.
that's
Hmm.
not true. That's not true in Northern Europe. You can do
Hmm.
both if there's no civilization, right?
Yes.
So, um, so we think differently. That's a given. We think differently than a tropical culture like Thailand,
Hmm.
Buddhist tropical culture like Thailand, and that or a Catholic Anglican sort of culture like Northern Europe, most of or whatever Lutheran, all of these things, and but okay, we think different, but is what so you go chicken and egg. Well, is that because way back our diets were completely different and part of what molded us is in fact the other being that's inside of us? Who knows? But we ask these questions. The other thing you can also ask, well, is it important? Well, I don't. It just depends on how deep you want to go down the rabbit hole on this stuff, right?
Hmm.
Can you change the world because you know that that could be true? Probably not. Probably not. But you can always you can always greatly change yourself and your own
Hmm.
perspective and your own uh, if you have a bad gut, and people know what I mean when I say that, it's just not working out for you. And there's an element of what we call too much information there, that you don't want to talk about. But there is that. And if you can rectify that, you say, well, my life is better. Well, because I'm not running to the loo all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but you could also say, well, yeah, but that's just one part of it. I just feel better in my own skin. I have a better outlook, a better positive thing. And there's all kinds of chemicals coursing through our veins. As a just a complete aside, as male testosterone starts to drop at the age of 20 and drops about 1% a year. So once you get to advance, I'm, like I said, I'm 63, and so a year ago, I said, well, how about going on the TRT, testosterone replacement therapy? And here in Thailand, you can do it yourself for $15 a month.
Mm.
You don't need a prescription. I just go to the pharmacy, get pharmacy grade, do my own injections, reasonable amount, not big. I'm not trying to do like steroids, like
Mm-hmm.
bulk up. But I'll tell you, the mental difference is amazing. And not, you would think, well, it's aggressiveness or male aggressive. No, it's male calmness. Because if you
Mm.
feel good in your skin, it's like a lot of stuff doesn't bother you. It's just like, let it go, let it go, let it go. I fight
Mm.
the big battles, not the little stuff, not the bang, 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 bang. This little thing, this little thing, every little thing. No, it's like, okay, is it big? No, okay, don't worry about it. Like that.
Mm. Yeah. Yes, that really makes sense as an example. So going back to and I guess it's perhaps an oversimplification, but perhaps a way in. If we can talk about there's such a thing as a kind of bad microbiome, on the other hand, there is such a thing as a good microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
What would the latter, a good microbiome, what would characterize that? And what have you seen? I mean, you've touched on this a little bit, but what might the differences be for someone as they move from one to the other? Like and it could be that you've got exact examples from people you've known. What kind of changes might that create?
Well, there's a diet is the typical approach. You change your diet, and so if you are that's why I start off talking about the potato starch, the raw potato starch. You can get that. You can buy that. Just look at for raw, unmodified potato starch. A tablespoon to 4 tablespoons stirred in water per day. It will it will change your life. I promise you. but but initially, it's going to be rather disturbing
Mm,
because you'll become a fart machine, to put it
okay.
bluntly.
Hmm.
Yes, yeah, but that's a signal that things are happening down there.
Hmm.
Truly happening. If you tough it out and you settle out, uh, lots of changes happen. On my blog, freetheanimal.com, if you just search potato starch on the search, uh, you can get tons of posts. I mean, hundreds of posts, thousands and thousands of comments from people uh, going way, way back that experimented with this. And you had body recomposition sort of thing, subtle, but over time, and changes in mood. A big one is crazy dreaming. Then I just thought about that. That was one of the big things we found, that
Mm.
everyone, when they start on this, their dreams are crazy. It's like you do a whole novel in your head every night when you go to sleep. So um, these sorts of things are, because obviously you don't think of the gut biome as either good or bad. There's always a mix.
Mm.
Which way it's leaning, right?
Yes.
So in other words, so the more good you have, they're the ones who keep the bad in check, right? Like I said, it's
Hmm.
chemical warfare down there. Um, And so you it goes that way where you want to where you just want to do things. So in terms of diet, um, uh, you know, fiber, vegetables. I'm not hyper big on grains, but things like starches and vegetables, beans, legumes, things like that are helpful. They don't need to be the vast majority of your diet. A little bit is good enough. So you can still be primarily, animal food type of guy like I am, but I still get my thing. And fruits, apples, inulin is another good prebiotic. Um, and uh, So, just fruits and vegetables, a whole lot is not required. You don't have to load yourself to fruits, vegetables, legumes, and that tends to, and in whole food form, and the whole thing, not juiced. You don't want to extract the fiber and just take the sugar
Hmm.
part, the
Yeah.
sugar and flavor part. You want to get the fiber part too, and it doesn't take a lot. I'm not saying, these people like, I'm not a more is better guy. Sometimes less is more, right?
Mm.
But just some, um, and it will tend to improve your gut microbiome for most people. Um, and
Mm.
limit the junk that you eat. It's not necessarily that it's creates bad gut microbiome. It's that you're just not doing enough to enhance the good bacteria that keep the bad bacteria in check.
Mm. That really
Simple as
makes
that.
sense. Hmm.
Very
So,
practical, very easy. This stuff isn't hard. If it was hard, then our ancestors wouldn't have been able to do it. They just did it naturally,
mm.
right? So
Yes,
our
absolutely.
problem is
Hmm.
more our influence by industrial society and corporate capture of government, um, and so that now everything that's officially approved was first approved by a corporate board of directors, and then it filters on it filters on its way on up to government as official policy.
Mm.
So
Yes. So, one very brief question, and then what you just said there about dreams really hooked my attention. So, I'd love to go there. I'm really glad you mentioned that because it was a bit of a kind of like, I could tell it was a bit of a throwaway thought. And I was like, oh, I want to go there. So, we'll come back there in a moment. But briefly, why potato starch? Like, from an evolutionary perspective, how does that connect to what we
well,
evolved with? Or
it's
is it more of an intervention?
okay. Let's define terms a little bit. It's potato starch, but what is called is resistant starch.
Hmm.
So it just so happens that potatoes are one of the richest sources. Another rich source of resistant starch is green bananas. But what happens when bananas ripen? So green bananas are green plantains as well. What
Mm.
happens when bananas ripen is that resistant starch is is part of that ripening process. So it's consumed and transformed into regular digestible starch
Mm.
sugar in the process of ripening. So you got to eat the banana green, or you got to eat the potato. You don't eat raw potatoes, but there's four different kinds of resistant starch. One, two, three, four. So what we're talking is one, um, and then you have I think the one and two are two different types. It's not a big difference in distinction, but then you have the grain. There's resistant starch in grains as well, raw grains, and then so all of these three, they break down when you cook them. So think of what I said before, the popcorn kernel. So
Mm.
when you pop it, boom. If you just eat a popcorn kernel, chances are it comes out the other end fully
Hmm.
intact, right? But if you pop it, now it's fully digested,
Hmm.
right? So same thing with resistant starch in all these different forms. But there's one form called retrograded resistant starch. So what happens is, the starch is cooked, then it's fully digestible. So you bake the potato, you boil the potato, the banana's ripe. These are two particularly high sources. If you search resistant starch on freetheanimal.com, there is a free download that lists out resistant starch in food. It's one of my most popular downloads. So when you cook it, it becomes fully digestible. But here's the thing. You put it in the refrigerator for a day and cool it. Something happens where it becomes resistant again, not quite as much, but somewhat. Here's the weirder thing, and they've done tests on this, like blood sugar tests. I'll explain that in just a second. So here's the weirder thing: if you reheat it, it makes it even tighter. So they've done this. So I remember one thing where they and you can test this by testing blood sugar response right after a meal. So if you take a pasta dish, just plain pasta, boiled pasta, boom, eat it. Your blood sugar goes, and this is the grain form of resistant starch. I think type 3, if I recall correctly. So the blood sugar goes bam up here, wham. All right. Now take that same pasta, same portion, cool it in the refrigerator overnight, serve it cold the next day. Same portion, same thing. Blood sugar only goes like halfway up, like less, right? Because it's some of the starch has become retrograded, not as digestible. So now it's feeding gut biome instead of you're absorbing it to raise your blood sugar. Now take the same thing and cook it, then cool it like before, but this time you reheat it, and the blood glucose response is even less because it tightens the resistant starch. So this is just one way to like I said, I've got hundreds of posts on this on freetheanimal.com if anyone wants to check it out. But the bigger picture is, how do you improve your gut microbiome? Resistant starch is just one way to do that. The thing, and the reason with potato starch is you can just go like mainline big right away. Right? Just do not like go straight to the end. Like even just one rounded tablespoon stirred up in water down there. I recommend start with that. If you're very adventurous too, and if you're absolutely crazy for, and you will never forget the experience, but so yeah. I'm not sure that it's up there with psychedelics. I've never personally done any of that myself. And that I did mushrooms once when I lived in France in the early 90s. And it wasn't a good experience for me, but, maybe that was just a fluke. I don't know. So, but this can, if you push through it, that's why I say start with a small dose. And it's not like, you got to be on possession. This gives you an insight, a mental clarity into how pronounced what you put in affects your mmicrobiome, and is even to the extent of how you dream, because everybody reports this, is that the sleep is like seemingly very deep and very amazingly detailed, kind of novel like story narratives, like a whole like you lived a whole 10 years in the space of 8 hours of sleep. So
Well,
that
hold
sort
that
of thing.
thought, because I really want to go there next and go there fully, because this really intrigues me. But just to finish off on the resistant starch part, what's your sense as to if our ancestors were consuming resistant starch regularly, more so than we tend to in this modern world, how were they, why, what was going on for them that had them, was it certain types of preparing and cooking food? I'm not necessarily saying you should know the answer. I just wonder if you've pondered that.
Well, I would the one of the theories about how we developed the inverse of our primate ancestors have big guts to digest lots of raw fibrous
Mm.
material, small brains. There's a thing called Kleiber's law, Kleibers. I suggest everybody look that up because all mammals, their body mass, energy body mass, is directly proportional. In other words, per mass, if there's a if like all mammals, so any other mammal has your exact same body mass. Like you weigh, how many stones you use stones. You weigh, uh, you know, 80 kilograms, right? So if you find a mammal that weighs 80 kilograms and you measure your energy, it will be the same.
Mm.
It doesn't matter whether you're human or a dog or a horse or a whale, any mammal. So
That's really
uh,
interesting. Hmm.
yes, so one of the theories for why what we have versus like a gorilla. So a gorilla is amazing, like strong, right? They say, well, yeah, but he eats nothing but plants. Yes, but he eats all damn day long,
Mm.
nothing but eating, right? And he has this huge gut to digest, to extract the needed protein out of plants. Humans can't do that. Our guts are too small. But
Mm.
our energy is the same. So what's the difference? If you measure our hearts, our livers, our lungs, everything else between us and the same size chimp or ape or whatever primate, all of those are going to be the same. What's the difference? Energy usage, brain, gut. So they have
Mm.
big guts, small brains. We have big brains, small guts. That's
Mm.
why. So the theory about how this happened in evolution is number one, cooking, because cooking makes available much more nutrition,
Mm.
and also animals. Now, apes, contrary to a lot of uh, chimpanzees are somewhat meat eaters. They hunt other smaller monkeys. They rip them limb from limb and serve them raw. Males trade the meat for sex. It's true. Look it up. Nothing has changed.
True story. So, coming back to the tempting topic of dreams, this for me is fascinating in that whether we look at this through, I guess, a shamanic lens, which has a very rich heritage of working with dreams, or we were to look at it through, say, a Jungian psychotherapy perspective,
Mhm.
both are very attuned to the dream world and noticing the there's so many different things I could say, but the symbolism that's in those dreams and how they are showing our kind of subconscious, potentially what's going on in our community, and something that we can learn to work with, which is certainly, been a huge part of my own personal work, but also that we do with students. And what you'll notice is if, for example, we are going through a particularly, and often if it's an intentional piece of work, an intentional initiation, an intentional, I'm going to work on this particular, it could be trauma or something I want to move into that previously hasn't been available to me. Just like you're saying, our dream world suddenly becomes, epic and mythical and vivid, and
Yeah,
we
I,
wake up thinking like I've just
I was, I
journeyed
was,
through a million
I was,
lifetimes.
I was going to interject as you went and listening to you and trying to think of how do I think and approach this? I'm thinking, I think, a dream in a sense is creating your own myth for yourself,
It is, and it's what's
right?
happening all the time, but because we are so believe in our waking life, we think our thoughts are, we think it literally is what we think the world is, we think it is. We don't
Yes,
recognize it's only this myth making part of us creating it. The difference with
yes,
dreams is we do have some understanding that's happening, but it's happening, I would say, at a much more profound level than we tend to kind of dismiss it as, oh, it's just a dream, rather than seeing this rich source of material. So the fact you've seen when people are going through this inner transformation, they are also having it show up in their dreams, for me really strengthens this hypothesis of,
Yeah.
what if this inner community has this profound effect on how we think,
Having
how we feel.
having experienced it myself, and like I could do it again. I could order some potato starch on. I don't really down it that much anymore. Haven't in a while, but I could order it, and boom, within a couple nights, I'm having this big dream sleep. And I've never really tried to unpack it. I'm not. It's not been an interest in mine. But it's like, well, that was cool. I'm that kind of guy. That was cool, right? So it's really detailed and really long and intricate and everything. And what 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 strikes me about dreams is that you'll in your waking life you'll be obsessed about something and you'd be thinking about it all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. And you go to bed at night, you sleep, and you dream about something, some little tiny thing that you haven't even. I don't know if anybody has had that experience, but I'm like, why didn't I dream about this problem I've been agonizing about? Maybe it would give me some clues as to how to solve it or fix it or manage it or whatever. But no, I dream about this little stupid thing, right? Well, maybe it's not stupid. I don't know, right? So,
Well,
but that's
that's the
just my
very thing.
experience.
Yes,
Yeah,
I would say more often than not, that little stupid thing may well contain the answer to the
yeah,
seeming big thing. But we've
yeah,
lost, talking about all these things that we've forgotten. I think
yeah.
that language of dreams is very much one of them.
Well, and that's and someone who's the in a shaman like existence, the purpose not really is I don't think to have an authority. It's somebody who listens to a lot of people and he or she connects these dots. He hears the same things
Mm.
over and over and over again. So when you tell him about your experience, he knows how to prompt you because of his he hears these different things and he's seen what happens if person is prompted in this way or that way, asked questions, you know and then he coaches you along or guides you into figuring out your own shit. I guess
Yes.
you could say, right? Is
So
that
much of it
correct?
is
Do I,
about
do I have
it.
that?
I
Do
think
I have
there's
that kind
there's a
of right?
lot to that. Yes, I think to a large extent, and I think this shows up in many different roles. It's about kind of joining the dots, seeing the patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really the heart of
That's
so much of
that's kind of
this.
what my blogging has always been around about is I look at stuff, I read stuff from every different angle everywhere every day, and then all of a sudden I like start to see this, like, I call it dot connecting and synthesis. So I'm like, so
Mm.
I do these crazy posts where I'm like, there's this and this and this, you don't think there's any relation, but let me show you, yeah.
A man after my own heart. Well, we are up on time, and this has
Yeah.
been a really interesting magical mystery tour around the gut in a way that I was not anticipating, but I've really enjoyed.
Well, what did we say at the outset? Let's just fire and forget. Let's see what happens. Let's just start and see what happens. So that's it's the way I do it too, and I'm glad that I got on here and was able to participate because I love doing these things.
Hmm.
It's fun for me, and if anybody finds anything, run out and buys potato starch and starts farting and dreaming, I'll be happy.
Take credit for that.
Yeah. Be sure and give me credit.
What a quote. If you want something to go on your gravestone one day.
I made people fart and dream.
find out more about you and your wonderful work, Richard?
Just go to freetheanimal.com.
Brilliant name, by the way.
freetheanimal.com. And from there, if you want to check, if you want to follow me on X or Facebook or my YouTube channel, it's all there. You can get it all from there. But freetheanimal.com is my main portal. I have tons of free downloads, about all this crazy stuff. We didn't get into AI, but I'm big into AI now. I actually have a chat bot that's the latest and greatest GPT-4. I run it through API, so people can use that unlimited, and it's crazy. It does voice, two-way voice, and so on. So we, didn't get into AI and what all that means for the whole mental state of the world, which is huge. But maybe at a future time.
Yes, maybe that's a part two. Unexpected part two, but hey, another way that community shows up right there. So
Yeah.
perhaps we will indeed. Thank you so much, Richard. This really has
Thanks,
been
Diane.
a pleasure.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.